Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome everyone. It's Friday night and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio with your host, Anthony Agati, in the blizzard of New York.
And me, Lucy Lee Peek from Chicago. We are so happy that you're here with us tonight. Our chat room is up and running, so feel free to further discuss the topic or ask a question. You can also call in with your questions to 661-244 9831. Make sure you press the number 1 to get into the queue. And if you lose sound on your player, just refresh your page or log back in. Blog Talk can be a little bit wacky sometimes, and you can also send us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. And be sure you check us out on our Facebook show page.
Okay, tonight's topic is lessons learned from talking to the dead, and coincidentally enough, that is the name of our next guest's book. Rob Guttrow is a meteorologist by trade, author by love, and a medium by destiny. His books will enlighten you, his words will inspire you, and his abilities will amaze you. Rob will be talking with us tonight on what he has learned from being a medium and what it has taught him about not only the afterlife, but also life itself. What is the difference between ghosts and spirits? How does your energy and feelings affect ghosts? And can we help cross over the ghosts that are stuck in our world? All these will hopefully be answered tonight. So let's start the show and help me in welcoming Rob Guttrow. Hi, Rob. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here tonight.
Hi, Rob. How are you tonight?
Hi, Lucy. Doing well, thanks. We're very happy here in the Mid-Atlantic that we did not get the snow that New York is getting.
Yeah. Well, we want to welcome you. And you know what? I'd like to begin when you were a little boy. Can you take us back to when you started your journey into the paranormal?
Sure. My first experience was as a teenager. It was about 6 months after my grandfather passed away. And I was sitting at home drawing comic books, as I used to love to do. And all of a sudden, as I looked up, about 2 rooms away in our living room, I saw orbs of light, little balls of light coming together, and within seconds, I saw my grandfather materialize in full color. Of course, being a teenager, it scared the living daylights out of me, so I grabbed the dog and ran out of the house and waited till my parents came home.
No. Well, you did mention that that was the inspiration that helped you develop your medium abilities, and I found it to be the most adorable thing. Who was it that inspired you to continue on with your gift?
That's a really good question, and the answer to that is it was not a human being. It was a very precious puppy that I had, and that I lost tragically in 2005 when his leash opened and he ran in front of a car. That puppy has come back to me many, many times in many forms, and he inspired me to actually write my very first book so that I can give not only pet owners hope that their beloved pets are still around them, but also people, because I've enhanced my abilities ever since.
That's wonderful. You know, I am a big dog lover, and you know what? Someone once asked me that, are there any dinosaur ghosts roaming around? And I really didn't know how to answer that. So, do you believe that all animals have souls, and can they be earthbound ghosts?
I do believe that all animals do have souls, but it's a matter of intelligence, I believe, that enables them to communicate with us. Dogs, cats, and horses, and even some birds, have the ability to the intelligence level of 3 to 5-year-old children. And several veterinarians have written books, like Stanley Coren, who's a doctor of veterinary medicine, that actually has tested the intelligence of dogs and has proven that they are as intelligent as a 4 or 5-year-old child. So those are the animals that can come back and actually give us signs. If you think about it, a dog can know up to 1,000, maybe more words. They know our language. They emote. They have behavior, certain behaviors, just like children do. So they absolutely can come back and communicate with us.
Okay, Rob, I have to ask you, you are a meteorologist. I'm in New York. It is crazy weather going on here lately. Can you give us some insight into what's going on with the weather?
Sure. You're being battered by what is a typical nor'easter with an enhancement. That is, there was a low-pressure system in the upper Midwest that is actually coupling with a low-pressure system that formed off the Carolina coast. And you basically have a megastorm, just the same setup that happened with Hurricane Sandy. Right.
I mean, it's just been so odd. Maybe it's just me because it's so localized, and I'm here in New York, and there's just been so many, not just the huge storms that we've encountered, but it's the fluctuation in the weather, and I'm hearing about that all throughout, like Facebook. People are talking about the immediate fluctuations that happen in the temperatures. It'll go from 50 down to 30 within 20 minutes or so. Is that just a natural occurrence that happens all the time, and we're just experiencing it and noticing it?
Well, that's a good question. Typically, what we're experiencing here is basically spring-like weather. These spring-like weather patterns, where you see the extremes. You go from cold to very warm, back to very cold again, and it's just very early in the season. So, my personal opinion is that I think the seasons are shifting and spring is coming earlier, although we are still in the meteorological winter.
Right.
But, climate change has a factor certainly in some of the weather. It contributes to some things. We see more intense storms than we did 20 years ago. Okay, all right.
Getting back to the topic tonight, Rob, being a medium, do you consider this a gift, or do you feel it to be a burden?
That's a good question. I know several people that do have the ability that sometimes think that it may be a burden, but I've learned to turn it into a gift. I've used my abilities to pass on messages that people really needed to hear, that brought comfort to them, including my own family when my dad passed away when I was finishing writing my first book.
Well, being a meteorologist and being in the scientific, field, how do you balance the two? Coming from a scientific background, and then also balancing the other side of it, being the paranormal. How do you find that balance? And has I don't know how much you've communicated that to your fellow peers in the scientific field. How has that sort of been perceived?
Well, paranormal science is still a developing field. There's still so much that we don't know about it. But how I've managed to reconcile the two is that I have learned that ghosts and spirits, and there is a difference, are all about energy. Basically, the bottom line is that our souls, combined with the electricity that runs through our bodies, combine into energy. And the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed, so it has to go somewhere. And either it stays here on Earth as an earthbound ghost, or it crosses into the light or into heaven or whatever you want to call it, joining the energy of the cosmos, and becomes what I call a spirit.
Okay, that actually was my question, because there is, in your book, Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead, there is a chapter called What is the Difference Between Ghosts and Spirits? And really, I wasn't really aware that there was a difference. So can you kind of take me through that again?
Sure, I'll be happy to explain a little more. Basically every book that I have read calls all entities ghosts or spirits. And I have made the distinction between a ghost and a spirit in order to separate them and make it more understandable. I consider a ghost an earthbound entity. A spirit is one that's crossed over. And there are similarities and there are differences. The first similarity is that they were all once people or animals. The second similarity is that they're both made up of the energy I just talked about. And by the way, I want you to think about something scientifically. When scientists measure our brain waves, they're measuring little electrical impulses. That's some of the electricity or the energy that I'm talking about that's within our bodies, that merges with our soul. Now, the energies that these ghosts and spirits can draw on to energize include heat, light, water energy, and emotional energy. And therein lies a distinction, too, between a ghost and a spirit. Earthbound ghosts draw on negative energy, such as fear and anxiety. If you think about when you go into a house that looks haunted, you get kind of nervous, kind of anxious. What you're doing is you're basically plugging in a power source to whatever entity lingers in that house that enables them to communicate, make noise, move things, etc. A spirit, on the other hand, one that's crossed over, powers up by positive emotions like love and faith and hope. That's why you'll receive messages from someone who's crossed in many different ways. Ghosts typically also choose to inhabit a certain place. They don't move from place to place as easily as a spirit. Spirits can appear around the earth to different people at the same time to give messages. So there's another distinction. And there are more things that separate ghosts from spirits.
Okay, so basically the ghosts, they're more from like a negative happening or situation, correct?
No, ghosts, yes. Ghosts actually draw on negative energy. It doesn't mean that the ghost is a bad person. So there's a separation there. It just means that the location takes a different kind of energy. And the other thing too about ghosts is that sometimes if you find out that a house has a ghost where people live, ghosts not only draw on negative energy, but they also emit negative energy, whether they're good people or not. And that's why if you have a ghost in your house, you may find yourself being more agitated than usual, having more arguments and so forth. And that's just another reason, for the living why we have to cross ghosts over. Because
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just going to ask, just as you were just explaining that, is it because they feed on that fear and they emit that fear amongst the living? Is it because of the frustration that they feel that they are earthbound? Is it because that they feel that they're stuck, that they can't leave, or that they can't move on, or that they don't know how to move on? It's just that anxiety, and that's the energy that they're feeding off of and also exuding out.
Absolutely, that is a big part of it. Usually, a ghost will stay here for a number of different reasons, whether they have unfinished business or if it's someone who passes away, and they think that by staying behind on Earth, they can help their family deal with the grief, which is the actual opposite of what happens. Or they feel like they don't deserve to cross into the light. Or sometimes people are killed in accidents and they don't know that they're dead, so they'll linger until they can figure it out, or some living person may come to the scene and give them a clue that they've passed on. And then they do get stuck here. Once they've been here for a little while, they do forget how to cross over. So that's why it's important for any ghost hunters or ghost trackers to bring a medium in and help cross them over to achieve peace.
Right.
Okay. Well, Rob, what I wanted to ask you, you've called yourself a medium rare, sort of, not
right.
fully cooked yet, but you're still learning. Okay. So what has been the most challenging part of learning or growing within this ability?
The most challenging part is finding time to meditate and concentrate. And most learned mediums devote their entire life to mediumship. They have that ability to be more disciplined, to be more focused. I have so many other things that interest me. I work with dog rescues, and of course, I love meteorology, and I'm doing all kinds of things. So life is very busy. So that's why I don't make the time to focus more. I suppose I could. I mean, maybe I'll do that when I retire. But right now, I need to pay the bills with my real job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
You know what? What I did want to ask you about, and that you mentioned to us earlier, was something in your newest book. You mentioned it was like a treasure hunt?
Yes. Back a year and a half ago, I had the most amazing medium experience. And I wound up writing about it and putting in my new book, Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead. Basically, what happened, and I'm not going to give you every detail, but I'll summarize it. My partner was in a relationship, a 12-year relationship, with his late partner. His late partner passed away in 1996, and the family never knew if it was a suicide or not, and they've always thought that it may be. Well, the spirit, his name is Ed, has come to me many, many times. I've actually seen him, hear him. He's given me bizarre things, bizarre clues that only my partner would know about. I had never met Ed in life, but I've grown to know Ed in death. I've actually grown to know him so much that I feel like it feels like he's a friend in another state, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
So one week we decided we would go down and visit Ed's father, who is still grieving over the loss after 15 years. So the week before we did that, I got all these disconnected messages from Ed. Ed told me, he showed me a boat. I was shaving one morning, and I saw, in my mind, I saw a boat, and he said, it's a rowboat, but it's a kayak. And I thought, how in the world is a rowboat a kayak? It makes no sense. And then he told me something about Duchess. And I thought, okay, what is a Duchess? What does that mean? I'm thinking maybe it's a dog because I work with dogs, but I had no idea. So I wrote all these things down. Every day I got something different. One was a blue book. Another thing was a soda fountain, an old soda fountain, like back in the 50s, like a soda jerk kind of thing, in a pharmacy. So I had no idea what these things meant. I think the biggest thing that he told me was it was an accident. Now, again, I didn't know anything about Ed really, or what happened. He was actually found dead in his grandmother's spare bedroom where he was living. So we went down, and the first thing we did is we met Ed's father at the cemetery, and Ed was standing right there with me. I felt his hand on my shoulder, And he gave me a couple of signs, and he said a couple of funny things that I put in the book. We talked to Ed's dad, and turns out Ed's dad was a pharmacist, and that week before, he had just met with a number of his buddies who were all soda jerks in the 1950s, which confirmed the old soda fountain that he showed me. So his father was astounded, and he said, "How do you know this?" And I said, "Well, just passing on what I get." I said, "The most important thing is that Ed said that it was an accident. Ed said that he mixed two medications that shouldn't have been mixed. Later we found out. Well, later he figured out. His dad figured out that those are the two medications that Heath Ledger accidentally mixed that took his life."
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So, in short, his dad, after 15 years, could finally stop grieving because he knew it was an accident and not a suicide. If I have a minute, I can explain the boat story.
Sure, go ahead.
No. Okay. We went to visit Ed's brother. And, of course, I've never met any of these people, so I had no idea what to expect. So the minute his dad was driving us, the minute his dad pulled up in the brother's driveway, on a trailer was a boat. And I thought, okay, we'll see where this goes. So we get out of the car, and his brother came over and introduced himself, and he said, I'm very proud of my new boat. He said, I like to take it out on the lake. He said, I just got it last week. And he said, I've taken it out on the lake twice, and I like to row around in it. And I thought, okay, check, rowboat.
Right.
I didn't say anything. So we went inside, met his wife and their kids for a couple minutes, and then came back out. And on the stairway, I was standing, my partner was standing, and Ed's father was down at the bottom of the stairs. And Ed's brother said, he looked over at the boat again, and he said, I am so excited about this boat because it's made of the same material that kayaks are made out of. So Ed's father, his mouth dropped, and he said all of a sudden, okay, we got to go. Let's go in the car. We got to go. So there was a rowboat that was like a kayak. And those were just a couple of the signs. The blue book thing was the thing that really blew my mind, but I'll leave that for another time.
Was this I'm sorry, was this sort of the first experience that you've ever had that confirmed it for yourself, really and truly, or were there stories before this?
There were actually many stories before that. My father was critical in confirming things like that. But the lesson that I learned from this is that Ed had shown me through his clues that he was with each one of his family members the week before we get down there, including his father, his aunt, his brother, and his sister. So spirits are with us all the time. That's a lesson that everybody needs to take with them if they've lost somebody. They're around us, and they're helping us.
That is so beautiful. Oh, my God.
Getting chills, right, Lucy?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to cry.
You mentioned... Go ahead, Rob. I'm sure...
Emotional. I'm very emotional, and a lot of times spirits will, make me cry.
Well, I mean, that's what I mean, I don't know if this is the right terminology or not, but, people who are within the field of mediumship, and if that's what you want to call it, and psychics, and, I hate labels, but the word, I'm assuming the word sensitive was developed in that manner, that, you're just and I make a joke all the time, and I tell Lucy that she, because she's a tarot reader, so she's a sponge. She just absorbs all of those emotions and puts it out there. So I figure that everyone is like that, sort of. I mean, you have to be, maybe. I'm thinking.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're right. You really do have to be more sensitive in order to pick up on the messages. When I fell in love with my partner, that's when my abilities really, really kicked in. And I became like a tuning fork for these messages.
Yeah, you mentioned that because I caught a little bit of your interview on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and you mentioned, and you talked about love and your partner and how that sort of changed the game for you and your ability to communicate more with the other side. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I really think it's a good point that you made when you talked to George on that.
Sure. Emotion is really the key to opening up to the other side, and love is the strongest emotion. And love acts, as I said, as a power source to spirits. So when you are someone who is in love with someone or has a lot of love in your heart, you actually act as a power source to help bring people to you to give you messages. And it really made a huge difference to me. My puppy that I had that passed away taught me. He was the first one to teach me what unconditional love was as an adult. You have that from your parents, of course, as a child, but you don't really understand it until you grow into adulthood. And then, when I met my partner and fell in love, that was we had the same thing. We had the same thing, and it works the same way.
Betsy Craig in chat had a question about where do spirits go? You mentioned before that sort of there's these earthbound ghosts and spirits are pretty much almost, and correct me if I'm wrong, spirits have the free range to roam wherever they want to. But do you know where the where is? Putting belief and faith aside, do you know where the where is that the spirits actually consider their home?
Well, it's not really a physical location, not in the sense that we think of a physical location. As a meteorologist, I try to look at the science, and if you look at what's streaming through the universe, there's all kinds of energy. You have gamma rays, you have all kinds of cosmic rays, X-rays. Everything and anything out there. So basically, spirits connect to all the energy that is in the cosmos. And, you can perceive it as, heaven or Valhalla or whatever you want to call it. But
right.
I believe that they join the energy of the cosmos, and that enables them to appear to multiple people at the same time. Whereas earthbound ghosts are it's energy trapped. Think about being a ghost as being a person in an isolation jail cell. And you don't have the ability to talk to the people that passed on that are crossed over.
You've touched on this before about helping ghosts cross over. So many times we feel so sad, that some ghosts that are stuck here. Maybe they want to stay here, but we just don't know that. But we just feel compelled to try and move them on. How have you accomplished this? Is it something that you sort of worked through yourself, or was there things that you've watched or someone who has taught you, or things that you've gathered on your own, maybe from speaking with the spirits?
It's actually all of the above. I've learned from talking to spirits. I've had some mentors. My friend and mentor, Barb Mallon, is a great learned medium who lives in Northern Virginia. And she's been a very important mentor to me. I belong to the Inspired Ghost Tracking, a ghost tracking group that investigates private residences and as well as historic places. And we have crossed over a number of earthbound ghosts that did not want to be here. But then again, we've also found some that want to stay. Some ghosts are just so in love with their house, for instance, that they want to just continue living there for eternity. And they do. And, we can encourage them to cross over, but, they do have a mind of their own. They were people, and after we die, we maintain our same personalities. So if they want to be stubborn in life, they're going to be stubborn in death.
Right.
Oh, God, am I going to be stubborn? You know what, Rob? There's one question that I've always looked for, like Anthony mentioned. I'm beginning to develop, this connection with the other side. And there's one question that I've had, and has anyone ever on the other side talked to you about God or a higher power?
The answer to that is no. They have not.
Okay.
When spirits come through to me, they tend to convey personal messages that are needed to either help them, help me cross them over, ghosts, for instance, or spirits come through to me to pass on messages to help their loved ones that are still here. So, no, I have never received any messages about God or any religious figures.
Have you ever asked them?
No, I haven't. And I haven't because I'm more interested in helping them on a personal level. Mm-hmm. I think everybody has their own religious beliefs or non-beliefs, and and that factors in how they look at a ghost or a spirit. And sometimes, and some religions actually think that mediums talk to the devil, which is
right.
I can assure you, it's just nonsense, because that's not
right.
That is not true. You can't help. My ability has been used to help people, and evil doesn't help people. That's all I can say about that.
We've been asked that question a few times. We've gone on paranormal investigations and gone to locations and talked to spirits, and they've talked back to us, and we've recorded it and all that other stuff. But and we've been asked, why don't you ask? Is there a God? Is there a Jesus? Is there this? Is there that? And like with everything else, we're not experts. I don't really know how to answer that question, or my belief is that I think that the spirits and ghosts that are on the other side, I don't think that's something that can be conveyed in words to someone else. I think it's something that everyone has to sort of learn on their own as they cross over. That's always been sort of my belief, I guess, and I think that's maybe the reason why that question hasn't been answered by a lot of people in the paranormal field. I don't know if you've come across that before, if you've had that question asked of you before, but sort of I just think that it's something sort of like, what is the meaning of life? It's something that's
right.
answered for you only, and you are the only one who will have that specific answer. And I think that applies to your faith and your religion. I think that will be answered once you cross over, because I think it's different, just simply because it's different for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like I said, though, I'm much more focused on conveying the messages to the people that need them than wondering, what lies beyond for, the universe.
Right.
Yeah, no, I understand. I totally understand. I do want to mention, you have a chapter in the book on orbs. Now, on our show, we've had some discussions on orbs, okay? And both Anthony and I, we have different opinions on this. So what
Sure.
I'd like to ask you, in your opinion, what are orbs?
I look at orbs as the most simple form a ghost can take. And basically the way to tell an orb from a reflection of light or dust or bug or something like that I have found orbs have a design in them. They have colors in them. And in one case, within my book, actually, I was on an investigation with the Inspired Ghost Trackers, and we were investigating a house that I knew nothing about. Myself and another medium went in, and we were told nothing about the house. And we both wound up talking to two women that passed. I talked to an older woman. He talked to a younger woman. And when the team was taking pictures, in the room, in this furnace room, where we sensed a lot of fear and anxiety, and it was actually like walking through a blanket of emotion, there was an orb. And when we blew up the picture, it's quite unnerving because there is a woman's face clearly in the periphery of the orb. And we believe that is one of the women that were killed in that house. And it turns out that there was a woman, an older woman, and her daughter-in-law, both brutally murdered in the home. So,
wow.
So I have in the book Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead. You can actually clearly see, and I actually diagram the eyes, nose, and mouth that appear in the picture. And to me, as a scientist, it's undisputable proof that that is definitely an orb.
Okay. So one other question that I've always had, and I hope you don't mind me asking, what happens to people who commit suicide?
That's a very good question. People who commit suicide do cross over into the light. There are a lot of people who have committed suicide that have come back and passed on messages. In the book, I actually decided I would have my friend Barb Mallon, the medium, write a chapter about her experience. And she said that it's like going. It's like once you pass, it's like being in school and you haven't graduated yet. So they have to stay and learn about life on the other side there. Until they're ready to cross over. They also have to forgive themselves. That's really important. And the people that are living also need to forgive the person that took their own lives. So people who commit suicide, all kinds of people can cross over. So that's a fallacy. And actually, that was one issue that actually really disturbed me, because I used to belong to the Catholic Church. I don't belong to the church anymore because of their politics. But when people who are of a religious nature tell people that suicide victims will never go to heaven, they're doing a huge disservice to the living.
Yeah.
Because it's not true. In my first book, I wrote about another incident where a preacher told an 8-year-old boy that his dog had no soul and he would never go to heaven. And of course, that devastated the 8-year-old boy and infuriated me.
Sure.
Because I've been in contact with a lot of dogs on the other side who have given me their names and everything else, and I've proven over and over and over again that dogs do go to heaven. So I guess the bottom line is we really have to be very careful about our beliefs. We need to be more open-minded, and we have to we do have to remember, as good as some religions can be a guideline for us, all religions are man-made, and we don't know everything about the afterlife.
Right, that's always bothered me that, not so much bothered me, maybe that's the wrong terminology, but people believe in their faiths and they believe in their religions, and yet they've never lived through the time suggested in the Bible, the Torah, or whatever they're believing in. So they're believing the word of whatever is written in a book, but yet people don't believe in the paranormal and in the power that we've all seen can come from that. That has just always perturbed me and confused me as to why that is. I've never, maybe this is just a statement, it's not so much a question, you can comment on it, but I've just never understood why that was.
I think it goes back to just the way we're taught growing up. We're taught not to question things. We're taught that these things are facts, and I think that some religions are presented as facts, where they really don't have the answers. And you're taught not to question it,
right?
Because you're taught that's what faith is. But when you have to question everything. You have to question everything. Otherwise, you'll never learn. And there's a lot of lessons that the dead have to tell us.
And I mean, and that's why we're doing this show, and that's why there are people like you that are writing books like this, so that we get the word out. Not so much that we want to brainwash people, but we want to get that communication out to others that there is another side to things, that there is something else that you should be thinking of, or holding dear to your heart, instead of just one thing that you've been brainwashed with for your basically entire life. But I had a question for you. Have you ever been told what happened, from spirits, have you ever been told what happens during the death process? Has any spirit ever communicated anything to you about what happens at that moment, if it's the light at the end of the tunnel, or if it's, a sort of astral body, out-of-body experience type of feel? Has any spirit ever communicated that to you?
Yes. As a matter of fact, some of the spirits who have died in accidents, they will tell me that there's a blackout period, and they don't remember the accident, or they don't remember dying in the accident. They don't remember suffering in the accident. There's a blackout period there, and all they remember is being on the other side, or being ready to cross over onto the other side. So yes, we do leave our bodies before death, if in the case of an accident. So people who have lost somebody in a car accident should take comfort in knowing that those that have passed did not suffer. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. I believe it. In your field, in working within the paranormal and speaking to spirits, has there ever been a moment when a ghost or a spirit has attached to you?
Has it attached itself to me?
Yeah, and I think it may be, this may be a different question as opposed to I believe his name is Ed, that experience. Is there ever been something or someone that has just been with you that maybe you've caught along your travels along the way that have just stuck with you?
The answer to that is no, because thankfully no.
Okay.
And I will tell you though, and this is an important lesson that I also learned, that if ghosts can attach themselves to people, it doesn't happen very often, but it will happen. If you are a pessimist, if you are a negative thinker, if you are always angry or disgruntled, and you're full of negative emotions, you're going to act as a magnet to some degree for a ghost. I did meet one young lady at a medium session, and there was a dark hooded figure with buckled shoes, and he gave me the year 1648. He had died in the Mid-Atlantic, and she had some behavior issues. She had some serious behavior issues, and the ghost basically attached itself to her. And I actually sketched out what the ghost looked like that was with her, and I showed it to her, and she confirmed that is the figure that she sees in her house all the time. And I told her, in order to cross that ghost over or get it away from you, you have to start being more positive, more optimistic, and you have to tell the entity to leave. So that's an important lesson. Always try to find the good in anything, no matter how bad it is.
Well, your book is called Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead, and you've just mentioned one particular lesson, and you've mentioned a couple before in the interview. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from talking to the dead?
The biggest lesson I learned is treat everybody equally. And you may not love everybody, or you may not like everybody, but you should love everybody. And we also have to forgive. You have to do a lot of forgiveness. Forgiveness will actually trap a person here after they passed. And, you know, I can say that because I'm half Italian, and my mother is 100% Italian, and Italians invented the word vendetta.
Oh, yes.
And so it took me 25 years after my aunt passed away to convince my mother to forgive my aunt, to let her cross over.
Oh, gosh.
And I wrote about, in the Lessons Learned book, the signs that my aunt gave me that confirmed that she crossed over, because my aunt had come to me a number of times telling me that she was stuck here because my mother would not forgive her. So, yep, it's important to forgive. Try to be kind to everybody, because karma is real. Even the simplest things. For instance, I was going to work one day, and some woman cut me off, and about 5 miles down the road, I saw her pulled over by a police car for speeding.
Mm-hmm. Don't you just love that?
So the same thing will happen to anybody. So karma is real. Another lesson I learned is that if you want somebody to come around and give you a message, be especially vigilant around birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays, because our family members always do that. A friend of mine's mother, who passed away, came to me a couple of years ago in the first week in March, and then she came to me last year in March as I was finishing my book. So, and as I was writing it, I went back to my first book with the first incident, and I said, that's weird. I wonder what it is about the first week in March. So I called my friend Kathy, and I asked her, and she said, that's when my mother's birthday is. So her mother came to me 2 years in a row the week of her birthday.
That's amazing.
So everybody needs to be vigilant around their birthday, anniversaries, or holidays.
Wow. That is like so. This is like so emotional. I mean, for me. I mean, this is beautiful. But you know what, Rob? You know, we've had the medium Amy Allen on the show from the Dead Files. Okay, one of the things that she mentioned, that sometimes the ghosts and the spirits become too overwhelming and try to take more energy from her than allowed. How are you able to control your energy and body when the spirits come to you?
That's a good question. Being a very emotional person as I am, a lot of times when a spirit is near, not a ghost, they can actually make me shake and cry. Quite a number of times. They've moved me to tears. But all I have to do is tell them to back off. I mean, we have to talk to them as people, because they were people, or they were animals, and they understand our language. So that's how I keep them from overwhelming me. You have to basically set borders when you first encounter a ghost or a spirit.
Well,
yeah.
This is I guess a question that could answer something that Lucy's been looking for, asking for. You know, there's a lot of people that are probably listening now people that we know that are starting to become aware of connecting to the other side. Do you have any, insight or advice to people who want to try and open up and connect, and maybe not so much advice, but also what can they do to protect themselves?
Sure. The first thing that you should do is focus on positive thoughts, positive energy. You can picture white light around you to serve as protection. And ask that spirits don't cross any boundaries with you. That they cannot, you have to tell them that they cannot, take you over or interfere with you. They can give you messages. So you basically have to set the ground rules. There are a number of other things you can do for protection. I'm not very learned in those things, but I think the main thing is to be firm about yourself and your health. And this is your space. So it's just like talking to a person.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, you know what, Rob? It has been such a pleasure. I mean, truly. How can our listeners learn more about you, and where can they go to buy your books?
Well, thank you. They can go to Ghosts and Spirits Insights.blogspot.com. That's my blog. Or they can just go on Amazon.com and type in Rob Gutro, Gutro, and my two books will come up. And they're in paperback and ebook. And I always encourage people who buy the books. My email is in the back of the book, so if they have any questions, they're more than welcome to send them to me, and I'll answer them to my best ability.
Oh, that's great.
That's wonderful. Well, is there anything new in the future that we should be looking out for? Any other books or projects coming up for you?
As a matter of fact, I am writing a third book. I had the pleasure of going to England last year, and England, of course, is extraordinarily haunted. Everywhere I went, there was somebody. And I actually even met a very special dog, which I was able to confirm with the docents in the museum. Yes. So in the next year, I will be writing that book.
Oh, that's great, because, actually we've been trying to get somebody to talk to about, the haunted locations over in Europe, and because of Blog Talk, they have these, crazy protocols for international calls, and it's just been a headache for us. So we've never actually had to have, or were able to get somebody on the show to talk about haunted locations. So when is the new book coming out?
Well, I have to organize it first and write it. So
you have to write it first, right? I know.
Well, I've written all the stories of the encounters. I just have to format them, put them together, and my third book is going to be based on energy, because it's all about energy. Whether it's a ghost or a spirit, just like a real estate agent will tell you, it's about location, location, location.
Right.
So I probably by 2014.
Oh, well, that's great.
Well, there you have it. You can pick up Rob's books, Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead, and also his first book, Ghosts and Spirits, Insights from a Medium, both on Amazon.com, and then also on your blog. Can you give that address again, please?
Sure. It's Ghosts and Spirits Insights.blogspot.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, too, under Ghosts and Spirits Insights.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know what? Thank you so much, Rob, for talking to us. This has been a real treat, and we hope you'll come back on the show when you finish the next book.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you. It's been a big pleasure for me, and I hope that safe there in New York.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Are they saying still that it's going to be a foot and a half here in the city?
It could be between 12 to 18 inches. It depends on what part of the city you're in.
Because believe it or
Connecticut, the higher the snowfall.
Right. And believe it or not, we've only gotten 2 inches so far, and it's 11 p.m. on the East Coast. It's kind of odd. Everybody's wondering, where is this blizzard? So,
the heaviest snow will be between now and 9 a.m.
Oh, okay. All right, so we got to batten down the hatches now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Rob, and have a great weekend. Take care now.
All right, you too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All righty.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rob. Bye-bye.
That was great.
That was wonderful. Oh, my God. That's so, a couple things clicked while he was talking.
Okay. What was your aha moment?
My aha moment. Well, when he was talking, when he mentioned about love, all of this seems to center around love. I mean, not just romantic love. I mean, it's like love for your family, love for life, love for the ones that have passed over. I mean, it's all about the positive. I mean, the connection with the other side really centers from that love that you have within yourself. And it makes sense. In order to have someone move on, there has to be forgiveness. There has to be resolution. I mean, they're people. They're just like us. And that really did click for me. And then when he talked about suicide, one of the hardest things that I've had to accept is that when a person gets to that point, I mean, they're obviously in so much pain and there's so much hopelessness. How can someone who is suffering so badly be denied the ability to move on? It just never made sense for me.
Yeah, that was pretty sad, that story of the priest telling the child about, his dog. To me, that kind of, that story kind of confused me. I'm not sure if that priest was delusional. I don't believe that is within, if that was the Catholic religion, I think it was, that he was talking about, that mentality is within in Catholicism, and I could be wrong. I mean, Noah knows all about that stuff, and I'm sure he can probably talk us up on that. But to me, I've always known, or maybe it was known, maybe not learned, that all living things have souls. That was just something that I always grew up knowing. Maybe that was just my self-taught knowledge, in the disbelief of not wanting to believe whatever Catholicism was trying to tell me. But I have that now, and it's just always been in me. It's not something that, I had an aha moment and that came to mind. It was more along the lines of that's how I've always felt. So it was kind of weird to hear that story. Kind of disheartening, too.
Well, you know what, as far as, the animals, and forgive me for if I get a little emotional here, I've known this. I love dogs. I've always had dogs.
Right.
My one dog, and we just called him Dog, he was with us for a long time, and he passed. He was ill. But you know what? I always felt after he was gone, he's still with me. We had him cremated, and the joke is here, that I carry his ashes. For a long time, I carried his ashes around in the car with me. And it was silly, and it was just something, but I always felt like he was there. I mean, even now, like when something goes wrong, it's almost like he's there. So
yeah, you know what it is though, and you said it before. You talked about love, but to be a little bit broader, it's about emotion. You have an emotion towards, another living thing, whether it be a gerbil, a parrot, or a dog. It's that emotional tie. You can't measure emotion, and that's the innate communication that you can have with other living things, and as well as other spirits. It's that emotion, and that's what ties you between the two. Whether you want it or not, or whether you realize it or not, that's the emotion, and that's what Rob was talking about, opening your mind, having positive thoughts so that you don't attract the negativity, because that's the key. that's the key to the other side. And that's also, you can say that the same way as that's the key to another living being. If you're negative to someone else, you're going to get it back. And one of the biggest lessons that he talked about was, treating everybody with love and forgive, and talking about making sure that you do right amongst others so that you sort of get that karma back towards you. And if you do anything bad, you're going to get that karma back at you. It then ties and relates and overlays into the spirit world. I believe in that 100%.
Well, yeah, I think you can look at things that happen every day, and it's there. I mean, you just have to open your eyes and realize, things that happen sometimes are a result of things that someone has done previously. But one thing else I did want to mention, too, like when he talked about the emotions. You've seen it happen to me, where I've gone into a place and I was hysterically crying, when we were in Iowa. That's happened to me once before, and curiously enough, it was in Gettysburg. It was on one of the battlefields where it was at one of the markers, and it just hit me. All of a sudden, it was just this intense, emotional feeling of sadness where I could not stop crying. And this has happened to me twice. So I understand what he's saying about where you have to kind of like set your limits and set your boundaries. If you go into this without any really thinking about those boundaries, you do leave yourself open to whatever is around you. So I think he made a good point about, not protecting yourself, but setting the boundaries. If you decide that this is something that you feel called to do, or if you want to do, it is very important to set those boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, well, speaking of treating everybody with love and forgiving yourself and forgiving others, that's the main reason that, and maybe this is a good segue, Lucy, that's one of the main reasons why we sort of created this, what could be silly to a few people who read it on our Facebook page, but we created a petition. It's it's an online petition to create March 26th as a National Hug a Ghost Day. And I know that the title of it is silly. It probably seems very childish, but it doesn't literally mean hug a ghost. It means that everybody within the paranormal field, everybody in the community itself, or people who are just, who love to watch ghost hunters or ghost ventures, and they love listening to shows like ours, but are not active in the field. It's that whole range of people who have been an investigator for 20-plus years, as opposed to someone who's never been involved but just loves to read and talk about and listen to paranormal stuff. Getting everybody together in that community and just celebrating what everybody has done. I mean, how many years has it been that people have been struggling and putting in so much effort to try and not so much convince other people that there is an afterlife, but for themselves to be searching for that answer, whether there is an afterlife or not. And all of the videos and the audio recordings and documents and experiences that all these people have encountered and received, that people just put it up on their Facebook page or on their website page, or document it on their file in their office, in their home, in wherever, and it just stays there. But I think what we wanted to do was just sort of pat everybody on the back. And it seems as though things are, this roller coaster ride that Lucy and I have noticed lately of this whole paranormal drama that's going on with, certain folks, but that's only a small amount. And I know that a majority of the folks in the paranormal community really do respect and treat everyone fairly and good. I want to believe that, and I have seen that in most, but there are a few that, tend to be a little bit more standoffish, or people who just want to prove their own and don't want to hear about anyone else's. And so we want to sort of break that tie. And this petition that we put out there, and it's on our Facebook page if people want to go and see it. It's on Paranormal Review Radio on our Facebook page. And it was just to get the attention to it. We're marking the day as March 26th simply because there's other silly national holidays that are not, sort of governed by the government or the state or anything like that. These are all like, the National Banana Day or, the Waffle Day and, all these other silly stuff that go on. And it so happens that March 26th was make up your own holiday. And so we took that date and we said, you know what, let's make this the date that we take for the paranormal. We take for the people who day in and day out and week after week and in these cold, frigid weathers are in those locations trying to get answers, or in those 100-degree, houses with no air conditioning because, you can't have that on when you're trying to investigate, trying to get the answers that they're seeking. And so this is the day that we wanted to sort of set aside for everybody in the community and get everybody together to pat everybody on the back, to compliment each other, and to sit back and just look at everything that's been done.
Well, you know what? I think one of the things that I've noticed since we've put the petition up is the majority of everybody is on board and they think it's a great idea. But there have been a few that are, I'm not going to do that, I refuse, blah, blah, blah. I mean, come on, lighten up. I mean, there is so much negativity and there is so much bashing and people just talking about each other behind their backs and I wouldn't do this and I can do this better. For one day, can we just stop? I mean, seriously. I mean, everybody gets into this field or gets into the paranormal because you have an interest, because you have a love for it. Okay, that's good. But you know what? Part of it is not to say that one person is better than the other or one knows more than the other or this one's only in it for. Of course, there are negative people in any situation, any endeavor that you find. We just thought that maybe for one day, we could put all this stuff aside and just enjoy the fact that we all have a common love for the paranormal. That's all it is. I mean, we're not trying to mandate or dictate, every March 26th has to be this. No, it's just one day that you don't bash somebody or you don't talk down about somebody else's. Sure, we may not agree on everyone's evidence. We may not agree on everyone's techniques, but that's good because you have to question everything. You don't blindly accept everything that's put up. But you don't down somebody when you don't agree. I mean, we're all adults. We're all intelligent, brilliant people. Well, maybe not some of us, but most of us. It's just a call for everybody just to lighten up, stop taking yourself so seriously, and maybe the rest of the world will take us seriously.
And have fun while you're doing it. Somebody actually, when they signed the petition, they said, maybe that's a day that we can mark with an investigation and go in with a positive thought. And I thought that was a really cool comment that they said. If this turns out to be, the day that everybody calls as, the paranormal day, they want to label it Paranunity or Paranormal Unity or whatever it is that they want to call it. It's just a stride that Lucy and I are trying to make, and something that we want to put out there for people to just take a break, and not so much about the bashing that goes on, but it's more about just reflecting on what you've done, how much time and effort and energy and emotion and everything that you've gone through. There are investigators who have been, oppressed by spirits and things followed them home and maybe now that things are okay and things are quieted down, that, maybe this day on March 26th will be a day that, you look back on everything that you've accomplished, everything that you've done, for yourself or for your group or team, that, sometimes when you do that, it sort of overwhelms you a little bit and makes you regroup your thoughts and maybe regroup your mission, on how and why you're doing what you're doing. But it also just solidifies everything. I think everybody gets so caught up in what they're doing, and they just keep striving and keep striving and keep striving. Well, we don't want everybody to burn out. We just want a day when people can just relax, take a deep breath, and just look at what you've done, look at what everybody else has done, and just feel good about it.
Maybe just have some fun. Maybe one day take your team, have fun.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. March 26th. It's still cold here in New York, so we can't go to, Great Adventure or anything like that. But that's a good idea. Maybe go out to dinner with your group, and just chat and talk to everybody. There's a lot of times when I hear people that do Skype meetings that they can't all get together. Maybe, instead of all getting together just to do an investigation, if you're all across, the U.S. or even abroad, maybe plan a trip on that day and have everybody come together and just hang out and just talk about things and getting to know everybody and treating, like Rob was saying, treating everybody with love. And that's the message that we were trying to get out. So, all right, I won't go into that anymore.
Well, I just want to say one thing. Even if it doesn't become a reality, maybe it just causes some people just to think about it. And if that's all they do is just think about it, I think that's a victory too.
Right, exactly. All right, okay. So why don't we get into some fan mail?
Okay. You want to go first?
All right, I'll go first. I have one from Shirley in Nashville, and she writes, Dear Review Paranormal... Oh, she wrote our name backwards. Review Paranormal. Should be Paranormal Review. Thanks for letting me send an email. I'm hoping you can help. I think I have a ghost in my house. I see black shadows on the corner of my eye all the time, and it usually happens in the bedroom. I always feel like something is watching me. Nothing physical has happened yet, but I don't feel comfortable in my home sometimes. It seems to be worse overnight and not in the day. I've seen this described on some of the ghost hunting shows, but not sure if it's the same. Is this a demonic ghost, and what should I do? Thanks for your help in advance, Shirley from Nashville. Well, Shirley, I hope this isn't Shirley MacLaine, you think? Well, Shirley, one thing I want to say is don't automatically think it's demonic. That's usually the first thing that people turn to is that word demonic. It's been said too much in the media. It's been said too much amongst people within the field, and I have a hard time with that word being passed around so much. So don't think it's demonic. As Rob was just saying even tonight, that, there are spirits and ghosts that, can give off negative energy. It just, it doesn't mean that they're negative or that they're a bad spirit or that they were ever a bad person. It's just that the energy that they're giving off could be, and like I was describing, it's just that their frustration. They feel feelings just like we do. And so that's just what they're giving off to you, and you're interpreting it as being evil or bad, or in your case, as you say, demonic. So try and not think of that experience as being demonic. And again, like Rob was saying before, it's so funny how this is fitting to this interview. Create a positive thought. Create a positive aura in your home and around you, and maybe things will change. There's only so much that we can do over the radio or even via an email back to you. But if you really feel compelled, maybe call up a local paranormal investigative group that you know of in your town or in your state that maybe can come and do an investigation and see if there is anything. There's a lot of times when, those clicks and bangs and whatever that you hear could be within the home itself, settling and water pipes and all that other stuff. But investigative groups would also then ask you as well whether or not you're taking any medication, whether you've been under a lot of stress, and that usually tends to create more of those visuals. And so that may tend to relate to what you were saying, what you were writing in here as far as the black shadows in the corner of your eye. Just for an instance, and I can give you an example, I had LASIK surgery about 8 years ago, and the doctor at that time had told me, you will, from time to time, see on the corner of your eye these little white bursts, and that is the after effects of what happens with your eye after it's had the LASIK surgery, that it just will never go away. Some people get that, some people don't. And so I still do see that sometimes. I'll be in my living room and I'll see a little white thing at the corner of my eye. Sometimes that happens because it could be a reflectiveness from either a light, the TV, or whatever it is on that certain part of the eye that wasn't completely, for lack of a better word, smoothed down while it was being LASIKed. So, I'm not saying that that's what it could be. Maybe you never had that surgery, but there are other aspects to that people should look at, and maybe that's what an investigative group can come in and talk to you about. Maybe that can sort of settle things. And I hope that answers somewhat of your question, but think positive thoughts, Shirley. Don't think it's demonic. Maybe just try and create that positive aura, that white light. Maybe things will change. If things don't change, then I would suggest you reach out to a local paranormal investigative group, and hopefully that they can come in and maybe answer some more questions for you.
I just want to add one thing, and I think it's the most important thing that you said. Don't naturally assume right off the bat that it's demonic. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing. I think that word demonic is just tossed around so much, and I think it just, don't naturally assume that. And then one other thing that to draw on what Rob said, talk to it. Assert yourself. Just ask them to leave. This is your home. This is your space. They may have been there. This may have been their home previously. There may be some reason why they're staying there. But if you truly feel that it is a ghost that is there, or a spirit, one, if it's a spirit, taking from what Rob said, maybe there's a message that you need to get. Two, if it's a ghost, this is your home now. It's up to you. Are you willing to share the space with this ghost, or do you want them to leave? You've got to voice your opinion. That's all.
Right. All right, great.
Okay.
Do you have a letter?
Yes, I do. This one is from Jesse Sanchez, and it's, Dear Anthony and Lucy, I really like your show. I love hearing about the topics, but I really love hearing about your investigations. I want to be a paranormal investigator, but I don't know how to start. I watch all of the paranormal shows on TV. What equipment do you suggest I get to start with? I'm on a budget, so I don't really have a lot of money to spend. What's the best way to find a group to investigate with? I live in Texas. Thank you so much, Jesse Sanchez. Okay, Jesse, the first thing that I want to say to you, stop watching the paranormal shows on TV. That's the one thing that caught my eye with this email was the paranormal TV shows. Being an investigator, going on an investigation, is not quite like what you see on television. Okay?
Oh, no.
It definitely isn't. And we can tell you, we've been on investigations with the people from the shows, and things are definitely different when we've been with them than what you see on television. So that's the first thing. Stop watching the paranormal shows if you want to be an investigator. I mean, go ahead, you can watch them, but don't expect to do the same things they do. I mean, don't go running into some place and saying, I demand that you talk to me and whatever, okay? It's a little bit different. The second thing I want to tell you is that, equipment, well, Anthony has every piece of equipment almost known to man.
No, I don't.
You almost do. When I go, I take a digital recorder, a little inexpensive digital recorder. I've got a small IR camera, and that's really about it. You don't really have to have a whole lot. Of course, you do want to have something that you can document whatever findings that you get. So you don't really have to break the bank to really start. But probably the most important thing would probably be that digital recorder. Now, as you go along, you may want to add more things in. The one thing that I did add in was a spirit box. And I can tell you, I love my spirit box. I've gotten some really, really good connections using that. But, I mean, all of the other things are wonderful, and they're great. I mean, some of the stuff that Anthony has, I mean, is just amazing. And we've gotten some really, really good evidence by using all of that. But to start with, just go simple. I mean, really, the digital recorder is probably the best. Now, the last thing I want to say, too, is about finding a group to investigate with. Well, of course, network. Facebook is good. Go to paranormal, sites. A lot of times they have forums and message boards. You probably can find people there. And in your area, down in Texas, I know they have paranormal conferences and stuff like that. You meet a lot of good people there. Now, keep in mind you're also going to meet people that have things to sell. But the majority of people that go to these conferences are really good and serious people. Go to one of the conferences, start a conversation with somebody. Go to a presentation, if you're interested in EVPs, go to an EVP session. Talk to somebody there. Network. The best part of this whole paranormal field is making connections. And I think that's probably the best thing, but it's not, and keep in mind, too, you're never going to make $1 million doing this. It's a hobby, but it's one that we love. It is something that we really, truly love. And before you go into it, before you become a paranormal investigator, just take a moment to really think about why you want to do it. Is it because you want to end up being on TV? Or it's because you want to do something else? Or is it truly for the love of finding out, what's on the other side? Is it to answer questions? That's what you really need to think about before you start.
Yeah, that was going to be my iteration to this email, was before you do anything, before you get any equipment, before you find any groups, is really find out why you want to be a paranormal investigator. Really, truly ask yourself that question. Is it because that you've been watching these shows that you just find it exciting and fun and it's something that you're interested in doing? That shouldn't be the answer. I think if it's something that you've always loved, if you've always read about the paranormal and have always found the paranormal fascinating, and you've talked about it with other folks and your friends, and you've got that connection with it. You're always thinking about it, and the answers that you're trying to look for are: is there an afterlife? What are spirits like, or what are ghosts like? Those are the questions that you should be asking yourself before you do anything else. And just to add on, Lucy started this whole paranormal investigating thing with really nothing. When I remember, you would walk into a location with really nothing in hand but a regular digital camera, a flash camera, and take pictures, and nothing else but your feelings, your senses. That is the best tool, I think, anybody, or equipment that anybody can have, is their own intuition, their own body, their own emotions. Because again, this is so funny, Lucy, that tying this right back to Rob, the whole emotion thing is what is the connection between, not only just between the living, but between you and the spirits. And that's how they communicate. That's why when you're at a location, I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 investigators will always say, oh, I feel something heavy. I really sense something right now, or I feel somebody's watching me. Or even people who, say that they may be living in a haunted home always say, I feel somebody's watching me, or I can sense somebody's behind me all the time. You don't need a tool or a piece of equipment for that. That's your own intuition. That's your senses telling you that there is that connection, that something is trying to get your attention. That's the only tool that you really need. So really research the paranormal, really read up on it, because it's not something that you should go into as a fun activity or a hobby. This should be something that you're dedicated to, because number one, either if you're going to just a haunted location that you're paying for to rent for the night, or if you're going to someone's home to try and see whether or not that there are spirits for them to give them the answers, you really need to know what you're doing, and you really need to understand what is involved, because the protection that you'll need and the protection that you'll need to assess for the homeowner is something first and foremost that you need to understand. So don't just think that you can just, go buy an audio recorder and just head out right now into a location and everything is gray and dandy, and then, you come back home to your own home and you've got things following you and you don't know what to do with it. So really read up on it, really research it before you do anything else. I think that's the most important thing.
And I do have to say one thing. I say don't watch the paranormal TV shows. Well, I have to be honest. The main reason why I started investigating was because I saw one of the paranormal TV shows, and I said I want to do that. But before I really went on an investigation, I tried to learn as much as I could about it. And as a result of my research and that led to, meeting other people, and then, I met Anthony, and then from there, we've gone to different locations. And as far as investigating and using those senses has actually opened up other abilities that I have. And I always kind of knew I had, but never really, I don't know if I want to say addressed it or acknowledged it. But as we're going along, oh my God, it's just getting stronger and stronger. And to me, that is part of that's one of the biggest rewards I have from investigating, is not only going to a location and making contact, but it's a personal thing. I'm learning what I can get from the other side, and I'm learning these connections. And it's so weird. It's like everything's all tying in. It's just wonderful. So it is a wonderful endeavor. And Jesse, if you really, really want to do this, then go for it. But like Anthony said, do your research and find out what's in your heart first. What do you really want to get from this? I think that's the most important thing.
Well, we have some time. We've got about 32 minutes left in the show. Unexpectedly, we ended our interview with Rob a little shorter than expected. So Lucy is going to read the Fan of the Week, but while she's reading that, if anybody in the chat has any questions for us, or just questions in general that you want us to talk about or answer for you, feel free to bring it up in the chat room. And as Lucy is reading the Fan of the Week for this week, I'll try and catch some of those questions if you have any, and we'll discuss them. All right, Lucy?
Okay, this week, the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week is Michelle Wiseman-French. She is a very proud grandmother of 4 boys. She loves Metallica, and of course, she loves our Facebook page and show. And thank you so much, Michelle. She posts on our page. She follows our show, and she is wonderful. Thank you so much for being a fan, and congratulations.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week, just like us on our Facebook page at Paranormal Review Radio. So Susan has a question for you, Lucy. What kind of spirit box do you have, and where can I get one?
Okay. The spirit box that I have is the SB7, and actually it was a gift. So where did you get it, Anthony? Actually, it's the second one that I've gotten like that. The first one I actually bought at a paranormal convention here in Chicago, and I actually bought it from Chris Fleming. So that was the first one.
And the second one was from Chris Fleming. I bought it from his website. I think the SB7. The SB7 is. No, I'm sorry. I didn't get it from Chris Fleming. I got it from Dave Chappelle's website. Not Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappell's website. Chappell, not the comedian. I got it from his website.
I would have liked one from Dave Chappell. I think that would have been interesting.
Yeah. No, I got it from Dave Chappell's website. But I think the SB7 is truly the I guess the grandfather of the spirit boxes. I know that there are hacks out there, the Shack hacks, and other ones that have manipulated the Radio Shack radios and some other lesser name brand radios that have sort of been hacked to have that quick frequency on the channels. But I've actually tried to do that with one of them, and I found a YouTube video to show me how to do it, and it did not work at all. It wasn't fast enough. It wasn't speeding through the different channels. So that is the SB7 is pretty much the one that you can get. But you can get it at Chris Fleming's website. I got it at Dave Chappell's website. Dave Chappelle. Again, I said it. Dave Chappell's website, which maybe what I'll do is, and it's dowsing, digital dowsing. .com, I believe it is. He's got some great equipment there, and I think for 2013, he actually has a new EMF reader that I think combines 2 or 3 other pieces of equipment that everybody has all into one. And I think he's got a special running right now. I think it was normally, we got an email from him, right, Lucy?
Yeah.
What was it? I think it was regularly $279, which is astronomical. But I think he's giving a discount of $100 off, so it's $179.99. I think this is, and I don't know what it's called, but it's highlighted. I think as soon as you go on digitaldowsing.com. It's
the Ovilus 3. And he's having a worldwide pre-sale. And let's see. It's supposed to be $279, but he's having a pre-sale right now with free shipping for $179. So, and that will be shipping on March 31st. So if you're interested, go to Bill's site and take a look, because Bill has some really interesting stuff. In fact, we've been kind of looking into, if you've seen one of the shows where he's using a Kinect to see movement, to see figures. We've been kind of looking at how that setup works. So Bill has got some amazing, amazing stuff.
We got a caller. Do you want to take it?
Sure.
Okay, hello, area code 989. You're on the air with Anthony and Lucy.
Hi, guys. This is Noah.
Hi, Noah.
Noah, you don't even have to say your name. We know your voice by now.
Okay, great. I'm very flattered. I really enjoyed tonight's show, and Lucy asked your guest a really good question, and he answered it in a way that I wasn't satisfied, and I was wanting to know maybe Lucy's reason for asking and what her experience was. And that question was, has the dead ever spoken of divinity or God or the afterlife? And he said no. And I sensed some level of disappointment, and I'm wondering if you guys did feel disappointed somehow, or if maybe you've had other experiences, or whatever thoughts you had that you could maybe elaborate on that exchange, because it was a great question, and I really wanted to hear what they had to say.
Well, you know what, when we were doing the research and I was thinking about these things, I asked the question because I want to know. I really want to know. I have my own personal belief, and I do believe in a higher power, and I do believe, that there is a force greater than us that's out there. But I'm really curious as to what it's like on the other side. I think my questions come from the fact that I want to know what it's like. I want to know how how they feel and what they see, and do you make that connection? I mean, there's so many of us on a daily basis that are trying to make a connection with God or their divinity or a higher power. And I know that you can make that connection here and now, but I want to know, does it change when you go to the other side? So that's what I was looking for. And yes, there was a little bit of disappointment when I heard the answer.
Well, I think he even said that he never asked that question. And, I mean, to be honest, Lucy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we really ever asked that. I think maybe we did one time. I think we asked the question, is there a God, or have you spoken to God, or I can't remember what it was, but there was a religious question that I remember. Something like that I remember we asked. But go ahead.
I'm sorry. During one of your live investigations, you guys did ask that one time, and I was glad you asked that.
Do you remember which one that was? I can't remember.
Oh man, I don't know. It was the one where you used the doll as a trigger object, and it was really cold.
Prospect Place.
That was at Prospect Place. Okay. Yeah, because I've heard throughout all the people that we know within the paranormal that always say, and they always comment about the television shows, why don't they ask about religion or about God, or is there a God, or is there a heaven, or anything like that? I've always answered it whenever I've been asked that question is I don't think they can do that really on television, so that they appeal, so that the television appeals to all and not sort of segregated when they ask that question, because then I guess some people will be pissed that why are they asking about this God and not that God and whatever. So but I think Lucy had a really good question. I wasn't disappointed that he couldn't answer it or didn't answer it. It's I think it has to do with his belief, and he did mention that he was disheartened by the Catholic Church and no longer accepts that faith. And so I think maybe that has something to do with it, and maybe it's sort of that blockage that he's created within his mediumship that, I guess if the answers are coming through, he may be holding that wall up so that he doesn't receive it because of the way that his personal feelings are and his personal beliefs are towards it. But I kind of agree with you, Noah, that, I really do want to find that answer if somebody has asked it and what that response ever was.
One other thing, Noah, that I have to mention, too, I know we did ask the question once, but personally, when we're in a location, sometimes I'm getting so much of other things that I would totally forget to ask that question.
Sure.
There may be so much more that I'm receiving or feeling or sensing that question just never comes up. I may be getting something else.
Yeah, it's more because what we do, and we can only speak for ourselves. What we do is when we're trying to communicate is what goes on in my mind, and maybe this goes on the same with you, Lucy, is that I treat, and Rob had said this, that I treat as though that the spirit is another human being in front of me, and that's the communication I have. So my mentality is, like, Noah, if I was having a conversation with you, the question wouldn't come to mind so automatically is there a God when I'm trying to talk to you, because I feel as though that spirit is another human being standing in front of me, and I'm trying to have a conversation. So it normally naturally doesn't come to my mind when I'm trying to communicate. So sometimes I've tried to write questions down beforehand and then open up that book or the paper and then read from that, and that sort of helps me separate it a little bit so that I can try and get that answer. But I think that's what happens with most people, is that they feel as though they're trying to communicate with a quote-unquote other human being, and that question sort of, because you don't normally ask that of another living being. Do you agree, Noah?
No, I agree completely. Like I said, I wouldn't think to ask that. But at the same time, when you have a really hardwired connection with spirit, and whether it be a disembodied person, ghost, or another entity, I think that as investigators, if we really try to keep that in the back of our head, if that's something we want to know, we need to make a concerted effort to really ask that, because I'm very curious. And I think that, like you indicated, Anthony, that, you know, our own personal backgrounds can block that, because we've all had, you know, some disillusionment with the faith that we were brought up in. But at the same time, I think that there's a lot to be gained, because I think that spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, is much more expansive. And when we ask that question, I think that it can be very transformative if we get the answer.
Do you think that you would actually get that answer? Do you not think, as I was mentioning before, that it could possibly be something that is just not communicated, that it's something that is, you know, sort of like a light switch is just turned on as soon as you cross over, that, you know, here's the answers to everything, like what is life, the meaning of life, and what is God, and what is the meaning of God. It just comes to you, and that's not something that can actually be communicated.
That's a very good point. I think that, you know, it would almost be like music. I mean, to somebody who's never heard music, you probably couldn't articulate that.
Right.
And I think that spirits would have that same difficulty. At the same time, I also think, though, the fact that we are able to communicate with people on the other side indicates that there's another side. And and by default, we could assume that there is definitely a higher power, however you categorize it. And for me, that in some ways, that's validation enough. But it would be nice to hear, in their own words, something.
I think that comes down to your belief, because I know that there are people out there who, you know, they may still believe in a certain religion, but also believe that spirits or ghosts, or whatever you want to label them, are not, let me try and figure out a way to explain this, are not within a realm of a God, that they are within, you know, for lack of a better word, the universe, the dimensions. It's that's the heaven, you know, the quote unquote heaven that we all talk about. That's where they are, and that's where it is. And it's not so much that it's, you know, governed and that's the home of God or the quote unquote God. That dimension or that world or that area or that realm is the quote-unquote heaven, and I think it's a matter of your belief. If you believe that, if you believe in that certain religion, I don't know if you'd be able to handle that answer, maybe.
I think so, Anthony, because, you know, just with my own studies of religion, I think that to really understand that is reserved for the dead. And I don't know why I sense that, but that's, you know, my gut talking, that it's really reserved for the dead. Mm-hmm. But I think that that it's really important, to me at least, to try to understand what they're saying. I would love to have a spirit try to communicate what they're saying, what's going on with them. But the cool part is, because they have crossed over and they have lost all ego and all attachment to what we hold so dear, that they're more concerned about us, and they want to give us information and give us guidance, that they don't want to talk about themselves. And that's been my experience. What do you think, Lucy?
Well, you know what? One of the things, well, the question came up too, because in my readings about religion and that, when I came across the Gnostic belief that God is within yourself, that has part to do with it. I was raised Catholic, you know, with all the beliefs and all of the rules and that. And yeah, I as I've gotten older, I've disagreed with a lot of what is being taught to us and what I was taught from a child. I think it goes to what Rob was saying about, you know, love being the basis for everything. I truly believe that the higher power is a being or it is an energy of love. And that's what I want to find out. I want to find out what the truth is, as opposed to everything that's taught to us and everything that we're led to believe. And maybe we are here on this side to search for that truth. Maybe that's part of our purpose here. And once we cross over to the other side, then we become aware of it. Now, whether or not the other people on the other side can share that with us, maybe that's just something that they can't do or won't do because we have to try to learn ourselves. If you're given, I can only equate this to like a video game. If you're playing a video game and you go online and you get the walkthrough and it tells you exactly every movement you have to make, here's what you need to do to beat the game. You get no satisfaction from it. Well, I think the belief in a higher power is the same thing. If someone just comes to you and just says, okay, Noah, here's how it is. Boom, 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 boom. This is what it is. You have lost the ability for that search for yourself. So the lessons that you're going to learn while you're going through that search, you'll never get. And I think maybe that's part of it.
I agree, because one analogy for me that comes to mind is, it's not a very good one, but parents often tell their kids, never drink, you'll get hungover, it leads to bad things, they give the whole spiel. But until kids, and I don't mean young kids, but until you try drinking for yourself, nobody can ever explain it to you or warn you or give you a sense of what it's like until you know once you've done it. And whether it's good or you're over the toilet puking, once you've broken that membrane, you truly understand. And so, to your point, I think that that's probably the case, because it's something that nobody else can experience for you. And to talk about it is probably to cheapen it.
Mhm. It's
right. I think, if a spirit were to come to you and say, Noah, okay, the God that you're thinking of does not exist. It is the name of the God is, Rasta, and she is the God of everything, the creator, blah, 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 blah. Would you believe it?
That's a great question, and and that also raises an even bigger question as to when we go into the afterlife, does divinity manifest in the form that's most significant to us or most comfortable to us? And there's a lot of theories about that. And there's been studies like with near-death experiences. Typically, Jewish people always see a blue light. Ones that are or are not active in the faith, and non-Jews, we always see the white light. And what they found is that in Judaism, that light is Shekinah or Yeshakina, the divine feminine. It's the lowest part of the Godhead, the 12th part of the Godhead that leads them to the afterlife. And so, culturally, even on in the cellular memory, they always experience the blue light, whereas non-Jews see the white light. And so I think that maybe we have to think about even as spirits. I think that divinity may come to us in the way that we're most accustomed, rather than it being a surprise. Because I think that, for example, if you're Hindu, the vision of, say, Hanuman, the monkey god with multiple faces, multiple arms, would be exceptionally comforting. Whereas if somebody was raised Catholic, that might seem weird or foreign. And so I wonder if when you cross over, if it doesn't meet your needs rather than the needs of other people or the people that will come after you. I
Right. It makes perfect sense, and I agree with you 100% on that. I think it's the belief is an emotion, and so the moment that you are crossing over, the blanket that's sort of wrapped around you to comfort you into that passing, into that exchange from here to there, that blanket that they put over you is what's most comforting to you, what's going to make you feel good, or what's going to make you feel comforted enough to accept what is about to happen to you. And that emotion is then created in the form of what your belief was, or what you've always felt was comfortable to you. And whether you are Jewish or non-Jewish or whatever it was, that is what will comfort you over to the other side.
You know what just popped in my head was it's a graduation. When you cross over to the other side, it's kind of like a graduation. It's the accumulation of all the lessons that you've learned on this side, and you've graduated to the other side. So whatever belief that you have, whatever is going to comfort you, I agree with both of you. That's what most likely you probably will see.
That's the degree that you've gotten? That you've received? Is that what you're trying to say? I agree with it. It makes perfect sense to me.
It's not so much like a degree. It's kind of like moving on to the next level. It's graduating from middle school, going on to the university or whatever. It's the beginning of the next phase of your learning. And who knows if there's another passing after that. I mean, the possibilities are infinite. I mean, we don't know. We're here in this plane, and we're here in this reality, and we're beginning to open up, and we're beginning to learn about the next reality. But what if there are more realities past that?
You're about to blow my mind, Lucy.
Well, it's just, it's like all coming into my head.
That's a very good metaphor because graduation, they call it commencement, and commencement doesn't mean an end. It means a beginning. It means you've gathered these tools, and now you can move on to the next phase of your life, and you've got tools to commence with your being. So wow, that's powerful. I'll probably dream about that tonight.
What is exactly is karma? When we talk about karma is basically a lesson. If you do something and there is an action that comes to it, you learn from that. You learn, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have thought that way, or I shouldn't have treated this person like that. It's a lesson. So our existence here on this plane is a series of lessons from birth to the time that we leave to the other side. It is lessons. Every single day, everything that we do becomes a lesson. I think as we're going along this journey, what we choose to do with each of those individual lessons also determines the path that we take.
Sure.
Wow.
Wow, that is really, that's some heady stuff. And like you said, moving on to higher dimensions or higher thinking or maybe different incarnations, that's very Buddhist of you, Lucy, because they explore that possibility in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and a lot of other sacred texts. So, wow, that's deep. You guys are good. That's why I listen. You guys are good. I love it.
Yeah, and as far as it's interesting that you say that because I've never really read about Buddhism. I don't really understand the basic concepts, but I understand that thought. And now that you've mentioned that that's like that, now I want to read those things and I want to look into that. So do you see what I'm saying? It's lessons. It's all lessons. I learned a lesson from you tonight. I learned a lesson from Anthony from what he had to say. I learned a lesson from Rob. It's all a series of lessons. And what I choose to do with what I've learned from each one of these lessons is going to help me determine my path.
And I think that's what is being communicated to us by the spirits. They're not saying it flat out, But I think in all the communications that Lucy has done with the spirits, I think in some way it's been embedded, that knowledge, that piece of information for her without it being said physically to her. And I think that's how they're communicating. I think that's how they're getting that information to us.
Absolutely. And, I really appreciate you guys letting me talk for so long. I feel like a phone hog.
No.
We love when you call. Look what just transpired, Noah.
Well, thank you. But I'd like to pose this for everybody listening. I read a really interesting in Zen Buddhism. There's a story they tell about the meaning of life, and they basically it goes something like this. There is a certain type of Asian deer that spends his or her entire life seeking out a certain smell. There's this musky scent, and they run, and some of them even run themselves to death. Once they get a whiff of it, they chase it down as hard as they can. And once they get to it, they don't know what the origin of it is. They can't ever pin it down. And so their whole life is devoted to this scent. And kind of the sad part, but at the same time, the interesting part is that scent is actually secreted from glands just below their tear ducts. It's coming from themselves. And so what they're doing is they're chasing something that's already inside of them. And they don't have the ability to realize that it's them, it's always there, and the point of their existence isn't necessarily to find that destination. It is to realize that it's already within them. And some, you don't know what a deer thinks. Some of them realize that, maybe. Some of them don't. But it's the chase that makes life interesting.
That was beautiful. We all have the answers. We all have the answers. I love that, Noah.
Thank you.
And
I agree.
My scent is carrot cake.
What's that?
She's sensing carrot cake.
Carrot cake.
Me too. Oh, God, with that cream cheese frosting and, that egg. I've been chasing that down my whole life. That is CK1. Those two things, I will hunt them to the death.
All right, no, we have to close out the show, but thank you so much for calling in. We really do love it when you call in.
Great
Thank you,
show
Noah.
once again. Thanks. Have a good night.
You too. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
God, I love our listeners.
All right. End us out.
Okay, well, you know what? The connections that we make every day are so important, just what we've been talking about, whether they're on this plane or on the next. There is so much we can learn from each and every one of them, and I think we just proved that. Respect for each other should not be limited to the living. The dead deserve our respect just like anyone else. They have so much to teach us. All we have to do is listen. We want to thank Rob Gautreaux for stopping by and talking to us. It was a wonderful conversation. But you know what? We haven't checked in with good old Sasquatch in a while, haven't we? Well, we need to remedy that. And we thought we would take a slightly different look at Bigfoot. It is said that the Native Americans have learned much from the Sasquatch people over time. And yes, I said people. Arla Williams is a Sasquatch tracker with both Cherokee and Choctaw blood. She has been able to bring unique parallels to light between the Sasquatch and the indigenous people of this continent and around the world. She will be joining us next week to talk about what the Native American perspective is on Bigfoot opposed to myths and legends. And she is going to tell us about her experience tracking this elusive creature. It is going to be a very eye-opening show that you don't want to miss. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You know, your support and your love makes this all worthwhile. Anthony, thank you so much for making this journey so much fun. So, until next week, my fellow beings of light, have a mystical and paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.